The kitchen timer chimed at exactly 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. Sarah Morgan wiped her hands on her apron and surveyed the dining table she had just set. The ceramic plates, the ones reserved for nights when her husband Michael wasn't working late, gleamed under the pendant lights. Outside, the maple trees that lined their suburban Minneapolis neighborhood had begun their annual transformation, painting the street in warm hues of amber and crimson. "Emily, Jason, dinner's ready," Sarah called up the stairs, her voice carrying through the two-story colonial home they had purchased 8 years ago, when Emily was just starting kindergarten. As she carried the lasagna from the counter to the table, she heard the familiar thundering of footsteps that signaled her children's descent. 13-year-old Jason arrived first, sliding into his usual chair with the practiced efficiency of a perpetually hungry teenager. "Smells good, Mom," he said, already reaching for the garlic bread. Sarah gently swatted his hand away. "Wait for your sister, please." The footsteps on the stairs were slower this time. Emily, now 15, entered the kitchen with her eyes fixed on the floor, her long brown hair partially obscuring her face. Sarah noticed immediately that something was different. Emily's shoulders were hunched, her posture withdrawn in a way that seemed deliberate, protective. "Everything okay, sweetie?" Sarah asked, setting the spatula down. Emily nodded without making eye contact and slid into her chair. "Just tired." Sarah studied her daughter carefully as she began serving the food. Emily had always been reserved compared to her more boisterous younger brother, but this was different. The usual spark in her hazel eyes, so like Michael's, had dimmed. Even more concerning was the way she kept her right hand beneath the table, as if hiding something. "How was school today?" Sarah tried, passing Emily a plate of lasagna that the girl barely acknowledged. "Fine. Just fine?" Sarah pressed gently. "Nothing interesting happen in any of your classes?" Emily shrugged, using her left hand to push the food around her plate without taking a bite. "Mr. Bennett assigned a group project in biology. That's about it." Jason, already halfway through his first serving, looked up. "Didn't you have that math test today? The one you were studying for all weekend?" Sarah watched a flicker of something, annoyance, fear, cross Emily's face before it settled back into careful neutrality. "It got moved to Thursday," Emily said, her voice flat. Sarah made a mental note to check Emily's online school portal later. Since the beginning of high school, Emily had become more private, more insistent on handling her academic responsibilities independently. Sarah had been trying to respect those boundaries, but something about Emily's demeanor tonight sent warning signals through her maternal instincts. "Emily, could you pass the salad, please?" Sarah asked, deliberately requesting the item farthest from her daughter's reach. Emily hesitated, then slowly brought her right hand up from beneath the table to reach for the salad bowl. Sarah caught her breath. The sleeve of Emily's oversized sweatshirt had ridden up slightly, revealing a series of angry red marks on her wrist. Too straight, too purposeful to be accidental. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Emily knew what her mother had seen. She quickly tugged her sleeve down and passed the salad with trembling fingers. "Thanks," Sarah said softly, her mind racing. Should she confront Emily now? Wait until they were alone? Call Michael at work? Before she could decide, Emily stood abruptly. "I'm not really hungry. I have a lot of homework. Can I be excused?" Sarah hesitated. Their family rule had always been that everyone remained at the table until everyone finished eating, a tradition meant to foster communication in their increasingly busy household. But the desperation in Emily's eyes made Sarah reconsider. "All right," she conceded, "but please take at least a piece of garlic bread with you. You need to eat something." Emily grabbed the bread without enthusiasm and disappeared back upstairs, her footsteps quick but heavy. Jason, oblivious to the underlying tension, reached for seconds. "Can I have Emily's portion?" "No," Sarah said, more sharply than she intended. "I'll save it for her in case she gets hungry later." Dinner continued in awkward silence. Sarah's thoughts tumbled over one another as she mechanically ate food she could no longer taste. The marks on Emily's wrist couldn't be dismissed as an accident or coincidence. Self-harm. The possibility hit Sarah like a physical blow. Emily had always been sensitive, perfectionist, sometimes anxious, particularly since starting high school. But Sarah had attributed those traits to normal teenage adjustment, perhaps intensified by Emily's naturally introspective personality. Had she missed the signs of something more serious? Had she been too preoccupied with her job at the dental office, too distracted by the daily routine of managing a household to notice her daughter's pain? After dinner, Sarah sent Jason to do his homework while she cleaned up the kitchen, her movements automatic as her mind continued to race. She needed to talk to Emily, but she also knew that approaching the situation incorrectly could cause her daughter to retreat further. Sarah pulled out her phone and began searching. How to talk to teenager about self-harm, signs of depression in adolescence, what to do if your child is hurting themselves. The search results were overwhelming, clinical, frightening. Resources for suicide prevention hotlines and emergency psychiatric services populated her screen. Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate. Was it really that serious? She thought of Emily as she used to be, laughing on the backyard swing set, proudly displaying her science fair ribbons, singing along to pop songs on their drives to soccer practice. When had that happy child begun to disappear? Sarah was so absorbed in her research that she jumped when her phone vibrated with an incoming call. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hi," Michael replied. "Just letting you know I'm wrapping up. Should be home in about 30 minutes. "Okay, good, that's good." She paused. "Michael, we need to talk when you get home. About Emily." There was a brief silence on the other end. "What's going on?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Just don't be late, okay?" "I won't. Love you." "Love you too." Sarah hung up and took a deep breath. Then she climbed the stairs to Emily's bedroom. She paused outside the closed door, listening. No music, no phone conversations, none of the typical sounds of teenage life. Just silence. She knocked gently. "Em, can I come in?" No response. Sarah knocked again, a little louder. "Emily, honey, I'd like to talk to you." "I'm doing homework," came the muffled reply. Sarah hesitated, weighing her options. Respect Emily's space or insist on a conversation now? She chose a middle path. "I understand. I just wanted to check if you'd like something to drink. Maybe some hot chocolate? Like we used to make when you were little." The silence stretched for so long that Sarah thought Emily might not answer. Then the door opened, just a crack. Emily's face appeared in the narrow space, her eyes red-rimmed. "Maybe later," Emily said quietly. "I really need to finish this assignment." Sarah nodded, summoning a gentle smile. "Sure, honey. Dad will be home soon. Maybe we could all have dessert together. I bought those cinnamon cookies you like." Emily's expression remained unchanged. "Maybe. I should get back to work." Before Sarah could respond, Emily closed the door again, the soft click of the latch somehow more devastating than a slam would have been. Sarah stood there for a moment, hand half raised toward the door. Then she retreated downstairs to wait for Michael, her mind formulating and discarding different approaches to the conversation they needed to have. Michael arrived home 40 minutes later, his tie already loosened, briefcase set down in the entryway as he found Sarah waiting in the living room. "What's going on?" he asked immediately, his forehead creased with concern. Sarah gestured for him to sit beside her on the sofa. "I think Emily might be hurting herself." Michael's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "What? Why would you think that?" Sarah explained what she had observed at dinner. Emily's withdrawn behavior, the marks on her wrist, her refusal to eat. "Something's wrong, Michael. Really wrong." Michael ran a hand through his graying hair. "Are you sure about what you saw? Maybe it was just a scratch from gym class or art project." "No," Sarah said firmly. "These were deliberate. Multiple lines, all parallel. And it wasn't just the marks. It's her behavior. She's been different lately. More isolated, less interested in things she used to enjoy. When was the last time she went out with Mackenzie or Zoe? When did she last pick up her guitar?" Michael's resistance seemed to crumble as the evidence mounted. "What do we do? Should we confront her, take her to a doctor?" "I don't know exactly," Sarah admitted. "I've been reading about it, and most sources say we should approach the subject calmly, without judgment or accusations. We need to let her know we're here to support her, not punish her." "Should we do it tonight?" Sarah considered this. "No, I think she needs space right now. Let's talk to her tomorrow evening, when we're all home and have time for a real conversation. But in the meantime, one of us should check on her during the night." Michael nodded, his face grave. "I just don't understand." We've given her everything. She has a good home, good school, friends. What could be so bad that she'd hurt herself? That's not how it works, Sarah said softly. Depression, anxiety, they don't only affect people with obvious problems. We need to listen to her, really listen, without making assumptions about what she should or shouldn't feel based on her circumstances. They agreed on a plan. They would approach Emily together the following evening, presenting a united front of support and understanding. In the meantime, they would pay closer attention to her behavior, look for additional warning signs, and ensure that anything potentially dangerous was secured. Later that night, after checking that both children were asleep, Sarah conducted a quiet, methodical search of the bathroom cabinets, removing razor blades and leftover prescription medications. As she worked, her mind kept returning to the image of those angry red lines on Emily's wrist. What pain was her daughter in that made physical harm seem like relief? What thoughts haunted her mind that Sarah had failed to see? In the darkness of her bedroom, listening to Michael's steady breathing beside her, Sarah stared at the ceiling and silently vowed to do better, to see more clearly, listen more carefully, and love more completely. Because the alternative, losing Emily to whatever darkness she was battling, was unthinkable. The house settled around her, creaking gently as old houses do. Down the hall, Emily slept, or pretended to sleep, and between them, invisible but palpable, stretched a divide that Sarah was determined to cross, no matter what it took. Morning arrived with the harsh buzzing of Sarah's alarm at 6 a.m. She had slept poorly, drifting in and out of troubled dreams where she was searching for Emily in an endless labyrinthine house, always hearing her daughter's voice but never finding her. Sarah moved through her morning routine mechanically. Shower, hair, makeup, clothes. Michael had early meetings and had already left for work. Sarah had the morning shift at the dental office, which meant she needed to get the kids off to school before heading to work herself. She knocked on Jason's door first, delivering the daily reminder that he needed to get up immediately if he wanted time for breakfast before the bus. Then she approached Emily's door, knocking softly. "Emily, time to get up, honey." No response. Sarah knocked again, louder. "Em?" When silence continued to be the only reply, Sarah opened the door, anxiety fluttering in her chest. The room was empty, bed already made with hospital corners, a habit Emily had developed in middle school and maintained with impressive consistency. Her backpack was gone from its usual spot by the desk. Sarah checked her watch. It was too early for Emily to have left for school. The bus wouldn't arrive for almost an hour, and Emily wasn't involved in any before-school activities on Tuesdays. She hurried downstairs, calling her daughter's name. The kitchen was empty, though evidence of breakfast, a bowl in the sink, the cereal box left on the counter, indicated Emily had eaten. Sarah was about to check the backyard when she noticed a note on the refrigerator, held in place by a butterfly magnet. "Mom, went to school early to work on a project with Zoe. See you tonight." Sarah felt a complex mixture of relief and concern. On one hand, it was good that Emily was engaging with friends and schoolwork, both potential positive signs. On the other hand, the timing seemed suspicious, as if Emily had deliberately left early to avoid interaction. With a sigh, Sarah placed the note on the counter and began preparing breakfast for Jason, who thundered down the stairs moments later, his hair still wet from the shower, tie askew on his private school uniform. "Where's Em?" he asked, grabbing the orange juice from the refrigerator. "She left early to work on a project," Sarah replied, sliding a plate of toast toward him. Jason shrugged, apparently finding nothing unusual in this explanation, and launched into a detailed description of an upcoming video game release he was excited about. Sarah nodded at appropriate intervals, grateful for her son's chatter, even as her mind remained preoccupied with Emily. After sending Jason off to the bus stop, Sarah moved about the house, gathering her purse and keys for work. As she passed through the laundry room, she noticed Emily's soccer uniform in the hamper. Today was Wednesday. Emily had soccer practice after school on Wednesdays. Had she forgotten her uniform, or was she planning to skip practice? On impulse, Sarah pulled out her phone and texted Emily. "Noticed you left your soccer uniform at home. Do you need me to bring it to school?" The 3 dots that indicated Emily was typing appeared almost immediately, which suggested to Sarah that her daughter was not actually engaged in project work with Zoe. After a moment, the message came through. No thanks. Not feeling well. Coach already knows I'm skipping today. Another red flag. Emily never voluntarily missed soccer, even when she was genuinely ill. Last winter, she had insisted on playing through a persistent cold, relenting only when her fever had spiked to 109 degrees, and Sarah had physically blocked the door. Sarah typed back, "Are you okay? Do you need me to pick you up?" The response was delayed this time. "I'm fine, just tired. See you tonight." Sarah stared at the message, trying to read between the lines. Should she push further? Drive to the school to check on Emily in person? Call the school to verify her daughter's whereabouts? But what if she was overreacting? What if Emily really was just tired, stressed about school, going through a typical teenage phase? Constant monitoring and suspicion could damage trust between them, possibly making whatever was happening even worse. Sarah decided on a compromise. She would go to work as planned, but ask Michael to come home early so they could both be there when Emily returned from school. They would have the conversation they had planned for the evening, but perhaps over ice cream at Emily's favorite parlor instead of at home, creating a more relaxed environment. As Sarah headed toward the garage, she detoured through the kitchen to pack her lunch. Opening Emily's lunch bag, which had been forgotten on the counter, Sarah was surprised to find yesterday's lunch still inside, completely untouched. The sandwich was stale, the apple browning at the edges. Emily hadn't eaten lunch yesterday, possibly not today either. Sarah's concern deepened. Loss of appetite was another warning sign she had read about, often associated with depression. Combined with the self-harm, it painted a worrying picture. She was about to zip the lunch bag closed when she noticed Emily's backpack sitting on one of the kitchen chairs. Sarah frowned. If Emily had gone to school early, why was her backpack here? A possibility occurred to her. Perhaps Emily had taken a different bag for her project materials and left her regular backpack behind. But that didn't sound like the meticulously organized Emily that Sarah knew. Sarah approached the backpack, hesitating. She had always respected her children's privacy, believing it essential to building trust. But if Emily was in danger, possibly a danger to herself, did the normal rules still apply? Her hand hovered over the zipper. Was this a breach of trust or an act of protection? The line between parental responsibility and respect for autonomy had never seemed so blurry. Making her decision, Sarah unzipped the backpack. Inside, she found the expected items: textbooks, notebooks, folders organized by subject, calculator, pencil case. Nothing unusual. She was about to zip it closed, half relieved and half embarrassed at her invasion of privacy, when her fingers brushed against something in the front pocket. Sarah opened the smaller compartment and froze. Inside, wrapped in a paper towel, was a kitchen knife, one of their own, from the block on the counter. The blade was approximately 6 inches long, designed for slicing vegetables. It wasn't particularly sharp by professional standards, but it was certainly sharp enough to cause serious harm. Sarah's hands trembled as she carefully removed the knife, her mind racing through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Why would Emily be carrying a knife? Was she planning to hurt herself more severely than the superficial cuts Sarah had glimpsed? Was she being bullied or threatened, carrying the knife for protection? Or, the thought was almost too terrible to contemplate, was she considering hurting someone else? The stainless steel caught the morning light, casting reflections on the kitchen wall. Sarah stared at the blade, her mind replaying every interaction with Emily over the past weeks, searching for clues she might have missed. Had there been signs of bullying, threats, conflicts with friends or classmates? Sarah carefully rewrapped the knife in the paper towel and set it on the counter, then pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over Michael's contact information. This discovery changed everything. Their planned gentle conversation about mental health and self-care now seemed inadequate in the face of this new, potentially more dangerous situation. As she was about to call, Sarah's phone vibrated with an incoming text message. It was from an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Morgan, this is Mr. Alvarez, Emily's history teacher. Could you please call the school office at your earliest convenience regarding Emily? Thank you." Sarah's heart raced as she immediately dialed the school's number, the knife on the counter seeming to grow larger in her peripheral vision. What was happening to her daughter? And more urgently, Where was Emily right now if her backpack was still at home? As the phone rang, Sarah glanced at the kitchen clock. 7:45 a.m. Less than 24 hours since she had noticed the marks on Emily's wrist at dinner. It felt like a lifetime ago. The school receptionist answered, and Sarah identified herself, explaining that she had received a message from Mr. Alvarez about Emily. "Yes, Mrs. Morgan. Please hold while I connect you to Principal Winters." Principal Winters? Why was the principal getting involved? Sarah's anxiety spiked as she waited, her free hand unconsciously moving to touch the wrapped knife, as if physical contact with the disturbing object might somehow provide answers. "Mrs. Morgan?" The principal's voice was professional but gentle. "Thank you for calling back so quickly. I wanted to inform you that Emily is here in my office. She's safe, but she's quite upset. We've had a situation this morning that I think we need to discuss in person. Would it be possible for you to come to the school right away?" "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Sarah promised, already reaching for her keys. As she drove to the school, the knife secured in a plastic bag and tucked into her purse, Sarah tried to prepare herself for whatever might be waiting. But nothing could have prepared her for the sight of her daughter sitting in the principal's office, eyes red and swollen from crying, hands clenched tightly in her lap, and beside her a girl Sarah didn't recognize, sporting a black eye and a defiant expression. Principal Winters rose from behind her desk. "Mrs. Morgan, thank you for coming so quickly. Please have a seat. We have quite a bit to discuss." Sarah sat beside Emily, who wouldn't meet her eyes. The knife in her purse seemed to grow heavier by the second. Whatever was happening with her daughter, it was clearly more complicated, and possibly more dangerous than she had imagined. And now, sitting in this sterile office with the weight of dread in her stomach, Sarah realized that the dinner the previous evening had merely been the first sign of a storm that had been brewing for much longer than she knew. Principal Winters folded her hands on the desk, her gray suit and carefully styled silver bob projecting the perfect blend of authority and approachability. The office walls were lined with degrees, awards, and student artwork, a calculated balance of credentials and compassion. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm dealing with a serious situation involving Emily and Caitlin here," she began, gesturing to the girl with the black eye. "This morning, before first period, there was an altercation in the girls' restroom." Sarah darted a glance at Emily, who continued to stare resolutely at her hands. "What kind of altercation?" Sarah asked, her mouth suddenly dry. Principal Winters adjusted her reading glasses. "According to witnesses, Caitlin confronted Emily near the sinks. Words were exchanged, and the situation quickly escalated to pushing. Caitlin suffered minor injuries when she fell and hit her face against a paper towel dispenser." The principal turned her gaze to Caitlin. "However, what makes this situation particularly concerning is what happened next. Caitlin claims that Emily threatened her with a knife." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. The knife in her purse suddenly seemed to burn through the leather, announcing its presence. Multiple students who witnessed the incident corroborated this claim. Principal Winters continued. "When security arrived, no weapon was found. Emily has denied having a knife, but given the seriousness of the accusation and the number of witnesses, I had no choice but to call you in and begin our weapons violation protocol." Sarah took a deep breath. "Principal Winters, I believe I can shed some light on this situation." She reached into her purse and carefully placed the plastic bag containing the knife on the desk. "I found this in Emily's backpack this morning, after she had apparently left for school." Emily's head snapped up, eyes widening in shock and betrayal. "You went through my stuff?" "Emily, please," Principal Winters interjected. "This is very serious. Is this the knife witnesses described?" Emily's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I wasn't going to use it," she whispered. "I just wanted her to leave me alone." The principal's expression was grave. "So you did bring a knife to school and threaten another student with it?" "No," Emily protested. "I mean, yes, I brought it, but I didn't have it today. I left my backpack at home, and I never threatened her. I never even took it out. I just told her I had it." Sarah's mind was reeling. "Emily, why would you bring a knife to school at all?" "Because they won't stop," Emily said, her voice breaking. "They've been torturing me for months and nobody does anything about it." Caitlin scoffed. "Nobody's torturing you, you're just a drama queen." "Caitlin," Principal Winters warned, You'll have your chance to speak. Sarah turned to Emily, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. Who's been torturing you? What do you mean? Emily wiped her eyes with her sleeve, inadvertently revealing the marks on her wrist that Sarah had noticed at dinner. Principal Winter's gaze flickered to them momentarily before returning to Emily's face. Caitlin and her friends, Emily said. They started a page about me online. They photoshopped pictures of me to make me look disgusting. They post horrible comments. They tell everyone I'm a freak. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They told everyone to stay away from me because I like girls. Sarah fought to keep her expression neutral despite her shock. Emily had never mentioned questioning her sexuality. Was this true, or just another cruel rumor designed to isolate her daughter? That's a lie, Caitlin interjected. We didn't start that page. And anyway, everyone knows you've been crushing on Melissa since freshman year. We just stated the obvious. Enough, Principal Winters said firmly. Caitlin, you're already in a precarious position. I suggest you remain silent until your parents arrive. She turned back to Sarah and Emily. Mrs. Morgan, regardless of the circumstances, bringing a weapon to school is an extremely serious violation. The minimum consequence is suspension, but expulsion is also on the table. Wait, Sarah said, struggling to process everything. You're saying Emily is being bullied? For how long has this been going on? Principal Winters sighed. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Emily has never reported any bullying incidents to me or her guidance counselor. Because it doesn't help, Emily exclaimed. Adults always say to tell someone, but when you do, it just gets worse after. Sarah felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Had she been so preoccupied with work and running the household that she'd missed her daughter being systematically tormented? The signs had been there. Emily's increasing isolation, her reluctance to discuss school or friends, her diminishing enthusiasm for activities she once loved. I'd like to see this online page, Sarah said firmly. Emily's face flushed. Mom, no, it's humiliating. Mrs. Morgan, Principal Winters intervened. While I understand your concern about the bullying allegations, we need to address the weapon issue first. Our school has a zero-tolerance policy. I'll need to convene a disciplinary committee this afternoon to determine the appropriate consequences. Sarah straightened in her chair. With all due respect, Principal Winters, I think we need to look at the complete picture here. If my daughter has been subjected to systematic harassment that has been allowed to continue unchecked, that context matters enormously. I agree it matters, the principal replied. But it doesn't negate the fact that Emily brought a deadly weapon to school and, by her own admission, informed another student she had it, which could reasonably be construed as a threat. I understand, Sarah said, trying to remain calm despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. But I'd like to know what the school has been doing about this bullying situation. As I mentioned, this is the first I'm hearing. Then perhaps that's the problem, Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her forcefulness. If students don't report bullying because they believe nothing will be done, something is broken in the system. Principal Winters's expression tightened. Mrs. Morgan, I can assure you that Lakeview High takes bullying very seriously. We have anti-bullying programs, anonymous reporting systems, and trained counselors, but we can only address issues we're made aware of. Mom, Emily whispered, tugging at Sarah's sleeve. Can we just go home? Please? Sarah looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion etched into her young face, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the raw vulnerability beneath her attempt at stoicism. How long had Emily been suffering in silence? How had she missed the signs? Principal Winters, Sarah said, making a decision. I understand the seriousness of bringing a weapon to school. I don't condone it, and there should be consequences. But I'm taking my daughter home now. She's clearly in distress, and I need to understand exactly what's been happening before we proceed with any disciplinary hearings. The principal frowned. Mrs. Morgan, I'm afraid that's not how our protocol works. Then how does it work? Sarah countered. Because from where I'm sitting, a girl who has never been in trouble before suddenly brings a knife to school, and instead of asking why, the focus is entirely on punishment rather than understanding. We have counselors who can— No offense to your counselors, Sarah interrupted. But right now, Emily needs her family. Call Michael, my husband, if you need to discuss this further today. He's an attorney. In the meantime, I'm taking my daughter home." Sarah stood, her unexpected assertiveness seemingly stunning Principal Winters into momentary silence. She held out her hand to Emily, who looked up with a mixture of confusion and relief before taking it. "We will need to reconvene to address this formally," Principal Winters said, recovering her composure. "And the cyberbullying allegations will be investigated thoroughly." Sarah nodded curtly. "We'll be available tomorrow. And I expect a full investigation, including interviews with witnesses and a review of this online page Emily mentioned." She turned to Caitlin, who had been watching the exchange with increasing discomfort. "As for you, young lady, understand that while Emily made a serious mistake bringing a knife to school, harassment and bullying are also serious offenses with legal implications." Guiding Emily toward the door, Sarah paused. "Oh, and Principal Winters? I'd like copies of all of Lakeview's anti-bullying policies and procedures emailed to me by the end of the day. I want to understand exactly what protections should have been in place for my daughter." In the car, the silence was thick with unspoken questions. Emily sat with her arms wrapped around herself, staring out the passenger window as suburban landscapes rolled by. Sarah kept both hands firmly on the steering wheel, afraid that if she reached out to her daughter now, she might fall apart entirely, and one of them needed to remain strong. "I'm sorry," Emily finally whispered, still looking out the window. "I never meant to actually use the knife. I just wanted them to stop." Sarah pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine before responding. "I know, Em. I believe you. But bringing a weapon to school is never the answer. Someone could have been hurt. You could have been hurt. I know." Emily's voice was barely audible. "Let's go inside," Sarah said. "We need to talk, really talk, about everything that's been happening." They settled in the living room, the familiar surroundings suddenly seeming insufficient protection against the outside world. Sarah made tea, a ritual that had always helped calm difficult conversations in their household. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm mug, but didn't drink. "Start from the beginning," Sarah said gently. "When did the bullying start?" Emily took a shuddering breath. "Last spring, around April. It was just small stuff at first, Caitlin and her friends whispering when I walked by, laughing at my answers in class. I didn't think much of it. What changed? Over the summer, Caitlin's cousin Madison transferred to Lakeview. She and I had been at science camp together 2 years ago, and—" Emily hesitated, her fingers tightening around the mug. "We got close, really close, like we kind of experimented, I guess." Sarah kept her expression neutral despite her surprise. "Experimented?" "We kissed," Emily said, her cheeks flushing. "A few times. It didn't mean anything, or at least I didn't think it did at the time. We were just curious." She swallowed hard. "But Madison told Caitlin about it this summer, and when school started in September, Caitlin started telling everyone I was a lesbian who had turned her cousin gay." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions, concern for her daughter, anger at the bullies, but also hurt that Emily hadn't felt she could share this with her. "Em, you know Dad and I would never judge you for your sexuality, right? Whether you're straight, gay, bi, or still figuring things out, we love you unconditionally." "I know," Emily said, though her tone suggested uncertainty. "I just didn't know what to say. I'm not even sure what I am. I like boys too. Or I think I do. It's all confusing." "That's completely normal at your age," Sarah assured her. "But honey, why didn't you tell us about the bullying? We could have helped." Emily's eyes filled with tears again. "Because it was humiliating. They made this fake Instagram profile with photoshopped pictures of me kissing girls and worse stuff. They added everyone from school. People I don't even know were commenting horrible things." Sarah felt physically ill imagining what her daughter had endured. "Did you report it to the school?" "I tried once. I talked to Ms. Patel, the guidance counselor, without naming names. She said she'd look into it, but nothing happened except Caitlin somehow found out I'd talked to a counselor, and the bullying got worse." Emily's voice cracked. "They started leaving notes in my locker, disgusting drawings. Someone wrote Dyke on my gym locker in permanent marker." "Oh, Emily," Sarah whispered, moving to sit beside her daughter on the couch. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone." "Yesterday was the worst," Emily continued. the words now pouring out as if a dam had broken. Caitlin and her friends followed me into the bathroom during lunch. They took my backpack and dumped everything in the toilet. My history project was ruined. When I tried to stop them, Caitlin shoved me against the wall and said, Emily's voice faltered. What did she say? Sarah prompted gently. She said if I didn't switch schools by next week, they'd make sure everyone in the district saw pictures of me that would ruin my life forever. She said they had Madison's phone and found compromising photos. Emily's shoulders slumped. There aren't any photos, Mom. We never took any, but everyone would believe them if they photoshopped something convincing enough. That's when you decided to bring the knife? Sarah asked, struggling to keep judgment from her voice. Emily nodded miserably. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't eat. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd panic thinking it was them again. I just wanted them to be scared of me for once, instead of the other way around. She looked up, her eyes desperate for understanding. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I just wanted to feel safe. Sarah pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, feeling Emily's body shake with silent sobs. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry you've been going through this hell. But we're going to fix it, okay? You're not alone anymore. They stayed that way for a long time, mother and daughter holding each other as years of unspoken fears and secret pain poured out. When Emily finally pulled away, her face was blotchy but somehow lighter, as if the simple act of sharing her burden had already begun to heal her. We need to call Dad, Sarah said. He should come home early today. Emily tensed. Does he have to know everything? About Madison, I mean? Sarah considered this. That's up to you, honey, but Dad loves you unconditionally just like I do. Nothing you could tell him would change that. I know, Emily said. Can I tell him in my own time? Of course, but we do need to talk about the knife incident and the bullying. That can't wait. Sarah called Michael, giving him an abbreviated version of the situation and asking him to come home immediately. Then she called her office, explaining that she had a family emergency and wouldn't be in for the rest of the day, possibly longer. While they waited for Michael to arrive, Sarah asked Emily to show her the Instagram page. Emily reluctantly retrieved her phone and pulled up the account, named Emily the Freak, with a profile picture of Emily's face crudely photoshopped onto a body that was definitely not hers. Sarah scrolled through the content, each post making her stomach twist with a combination of nausea and fury. Doctored images showing Emily in compromising positions, screenshots of private conversations that had been manipulated to make innocent comments sound sexual or deviant, videos of Emily going about her school day, clearly filmed without her knowledge, with cruel captions and derisive commentary. Most disturbing were the comments, hundreds of them, ranging from casual cruelty to explicit threats. Some came from accounts Sarah recognized as belonging to Emily's former friends. Others were anonymous, hiding behind random usernames to spew their venom. Have you saved all of this? Sarah asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. Emily nodded. Screenshots in a folder. I was keeping them in case. I don't know, in case someone finally believed me. Good. That was smart. We'll need those. Sarah handed the phone back, unable to stomach any more of the cruelty displayed there. Emily, this is illegal. What they're doing is cyberbullying, harassment, and in some cases might even qualify as threats. We're going to report this, not just to the school, but to the police. Emily's eyes widened. The police? Mom, that will make everything worse. No, honey. What would make things worse is letting this continue. Sarah's voice was firm. This isn't just kids being mean. This is systematic harassment. It's criminal behavior. Michael arrived 30 minutes later, his face etched with concern. Sarah had rarely seen her husband leave work in the middle of the day. His position as a corporate attorney typically kept him chained to his desk through endless meetings and conference calls. But today, he had dropped everything without hesitation. What's going on? He asked as soon as he entered, his eyes going immediately to Emily. Sarah explained the situation. The knife, the confrontation at school, the months of bullying that had led to Emily's desperate act. Michael listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly grim. Let me see this Instagram account, he said when Sarah finished. Emily hesitated. Dad, it's really bad. I need to see it, Em. Please. Emily handed over her phone, looking miserable as Michael scrolled through the account, his jaw tightening with each swipe. "This is defamation," he said finally, "and harassment, and probably violates about a dozen other laws." He handed the phone back to Emily. "We're going to handle this, sweetheart. I promise you." "How?" Emily asked, her voice small. Michael sat beside her on the couch, taking her hand in his. "First, we document everything. Screenshots, names, dates, everything. Then we go to the police and file a formal report. Simultaneously, we meet with the school administration, not just the principal, but the superintendent if necessary." His voice was calm, but resolute. "We get restraining orders against the primary perpetrators. We consider a civil lawsuit against their parents. But everyone will know," Emily protested. "It'll be even more humiliating." Michael said gently. "Everyone already knows what they're saying about you. What they don't know is that it's false, malicious, and illegal, and that there are consequences for this kind of behavior." Sarah watched the interaction between father and daughter, feeling a surge of gratitude for Michael's steady presence and clear thinking, where she had been overwhelmed by emotion. Vacillating between heartbreak for Emily and rage at her tormentors, Michael was already mapping out a strategic response. "What about the knife?" Emily asked. "Am I going to be expelled?" Michael exchanged a glance with Sarah. "We'll deal with that too. The school has policies, but they also have discretion, especially in cases with extenuating circumstances. Your spotless record until now, the documented bullying, your willingness to accept appropriate consequences, these all work in your favor. But I won't lie to you," Sarah added. "There will be consequences for bringing a weapon to school. We'll fight for fairness, but we also need to acknowledge that what you did was dangerous and wrong, even if we understand why you felt driven to it." Emily nodded, seeming to accept this. "What do we do now?" "Now," Michael said, "we eat lunch, because none of us has had anything since breakfast. Then we start documenting everything, every incident, every post, every name involved. After that, we call Officer Rivera, Dad's college roommate," Sarah explained, seeing Emily's confusion. "He's a detective with the Minneapolis Police Department now. He'll help us navigate filing the report properly." While Michael ordered pizza, comfort food for a family in crisis, Sarah helped Emily create a detailed chronology of the bullying, starting with the earliest instances she could recall. It was painful work, requiring Emily to relive months of torment. But Sarah could see that the methodical documentation was also empowering her daughter in some small way. Each incident recorded was an acknowledgement that what had happened to her was real, significant, and worthy of response. As they worked, Sarah's phone chimed with an incoming email from Principal Winters, the anti-bullying policies she had requested. She skimmed them quickly, noting the stark contrast between the school's stated commitment to a harassment-free learning environment and the reality Emily had experienced. The pizza arrived, and they took a break to eat, the familiar comfort of cheese and pepperoni offering a momentary respite from the heaviness of the day. Jason would be home from school soon, and they would need to decide how much to share with him. At 13, he was perceptive enough to know something serious was happening, but perhaps too young to understand all the complexities involved. After lunch, Michael called Detective Rivera. Speaking in the measured tones of an attorney presenting a case, Sarah heard phrases like coordinated harassment campaign, failure of duty of care, and imminent threat of defamation. When he hung up, his expression was satisfied. "Rivera's coming over at 4, he told them. "He'll take Emily's statement and help us file a formal report." He also suggested bringing printed copies of everything. The Instagram posts, the comments, any text messages or emails related to the bullying. Sarah nodded, already planning to drive to the office supply store for printer paper and ink. "What about Jason? How much do we tell him?" Michael considered this. The basics. That Emily's been bullied, that we're handling it as a family, and that the police are involved because what happened crossed a line. He doesn't need all the details, but he should understand the seriousness. "And I want him to feel he can come to us if he ever faces anything similar," Sarah added. Emily, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly looked up. "My phone's buzzing like crazy." She pulled it from her pocket, her face paling as she read the screen. It's blowing up with texts from people at school. Someone posted on the fake account that I threatened Caitlin with a knife and got arrested. She turned the phone to show them a new post on the Emily the Freak account. A crudely photoshopped image of Emily in handcuffs with the caption, "Psycho lesbian pulls knife at school, lock her up." Sarah felt a surge of protective rage. "This ends today," she said firmly. "Right now, give me your phone." Emily hesitated, then handed it over. Sarah opened the Instagram app, navigated to the fake account, and hit the report button. She methodically reported every single post for harassment, false impersonation, and hate speech. Then she blocked the account from Emily's profile and, for good measure, deactivated Emily's Instagram temporarily. "There," she said, handing the phone back. "Step 1. Now they can't reach you directly anymore. They'll just find other ways," Emily said wearily. "Maybe," Michael acknowledged. "But now we're ahead of them. We have documentation of everything they've done so far. We have the authorities involved. And most importantly," he squeezed Emily's shoulder, "you're not facing this alone anymore." The front door opened and closed, announcing Jason's arrival from school. The family fell silent, watching as he bounded into the living room, then froze, taking in the unusual tableau of his entire family gathered in the middle of a weekday. "What's going on?" he asked, his adolescent bravado failing to mask his concern. "Is everybody okay?" Sarah patted the couch beside her. "Come sit down, Jason. We need to talk as a family about something important that's happening with Emily." As Jason cautiously took a seat, looking between his parents and sister with growing apprehension, Sarah realized that this moment, painful as it was, represented a turning point. The secrets that had been festering in their family were finally being exposed to light and air. Emily's isolation was ending. Their family was rallying. The knife that Sarah had discovered in Emily's backpack that morning had been a symptom, not the disease itself. The disease was silence. Emily's silence about the bullying, Sarah's silence about her concerns, the school's silence in the face of cruelty. That silence was now being broken, word by painful word. Detective Rivera would arrive soon. There would be statements to give, evidence to provide, difficult questions to answer. Tomorrow would bring a meeting with the school administration and decisions about Emily's academic future. The days ahead would not be easy. But as Sarah looked at her family gathered together, Michael's steady strength, Emily's fragile but real courage, even Jason's confused but unconditional support, she felt, for the first time since noticing those marks on Emily's wrist at dinner, a flicker of hope. The healing had begun. The truth, however painful, was finally coming to light. And in that light, perhaps Emily could begin to find her way back to herself again. The Morgan family's living room had transformed into an impromptu war room by the time Detective Carlos Rivera arrived. Printouts of screenshots covered the coffee table, a disturbing collage of cruelty documented in high resolution. Michael had set up his laptop to record Emily's formal statement. Sarah had prepared coffee and arranged extra chairs, treating the occasion with the gravity it deserved. Jason sat quietly in the corner, still processing the abbreviated version of events his parents had shared. His usual restless energy had given way to a protective stillness as he watched his sister with new eyes. The doorbell rang precisely at 4 South p.m. "That'll be Carlos," Michael said, standing to answer the door. Detective Rivera wasn't what Emily had expected. In her limited experience with police, mostly gleaned from television, detectives were either grizzled older men with permanent scowls or impossibly stylish women who could chase down suspects in stilettos. Carlos Rivera was neither. He was in his mid-40s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the slight paunch of a former athlete who had settled into middle age. "Thank you for coming, Carlos," Michael said, shaking the detective's hand before leading him into the living room. "Of course," Detective Rivera replied. He nodded to Sarah, then turned his attention to Emily. "You must be Emily. I'm Detective Rivera, but you can call me Carlos if that makes you more comfortable." Emily managed a weak smile. "Nice to meet you. I wish it were under better circumstances," the detective said, taking the seat Michael offered. He set his official-looking briefcase on the coffee table but didn't immediately open it. Instead, he leaned forward, his manner conversational rather than interrogatory. Before we get into the formal statement, I'd like to just talk for a bit, if that's okay with you. Emily nodded cautiously. Your dad gave me a brief overview, but I'd like to hear directly from you what's been happening. He glanced at the pile of printouts. I see you've been thorough with documentation, which is excellent. That will help us tremendously. Emily looked to her parents, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, she began to recount her ordeal. The escalating harassment that had begun in April, Madison's betrayal, the creation of the fake Instagram account, the bathroom confrontation that had led to her bringing the knife to school. Detective Rivera listened without interruption, occasionally making notes but mostly maintaining eye contact, his expression attentive and non-judgmental. When Emily's voice cracked describing the most humiliating incidents, he waited patiently for her to collect herself. That took a lot of courage, he said when she had finished. Thank you for sharing your story with me. Now I need to ask you some specific questions to clarify a few points, and then we'll make your formal statement. Is that okay? Emily nodded. First, regarding the Instagram account, have you been able to identify who specifically created and maintains it? Caitlin Barnes is the main one, Emily said. But her friends Alexis Chen and Brooke Donovan post stuff too. Sometimes they tag themselves accidentally or mention inside jokes that only they would know. And have you received direct threats of physical harm through this account or in person? Emily hesitated. Not exactly physical harm. More like threats to my reputation or social standing. Caitlin did shove me yesterday in the bathroom, but that's the only physical thing. But the ongoing nature and severity of the harassment made you fear for your safety enough to bring a knife to school, Detective Rivera noted. Not as a question, but as a statement of understanding. Yes, Emily admitted. I was scared all the time. I couldn't sleep. I started hurting myself. She unconsciously tugged at her sleeve, covering the marks on her wrist. I just wanted them to leave me alone. Detective Rivera's expression remained professional, but his eyes reflected compassion. I understand. Now, about the knife incident this morning. You stated to Principal Winters that you told Caitlin you had a knife, but didn't actually have it with you. Is that correct? Yes. I left my backpack at home this morning deliberately. I didn't want to actually bring it to school, but when Caitlin confronted me again in the bathroom, saying they were going to post even worse stuff, I just snapped. I told her I had a knife in my backpack and that she should stay away from me. Emily's voice dropped. I wanted her to be scared. I wanted to feel powerful instead of terrified for once. Thank you for being honest, the detective said. That's important and it helps me understand the context. He turned to Michael and Sarah. Based on what I've heard, we're looking at multiple potential charges against these juveniles. Criminal harassment, cyberbullying, intimidation, possibly extortion depending on specific threats made. What about the knife? Sarah asked. What legal implications does that have for Emily? Detective Rivera's expression turned thoughtful. Given that the knife was never actually brought to school premises, we're not looking at weapons charges from a criminal perspective. The school's administrative consequences are separate, of course, but from my standpoint, Emily's actions were clearly a response to ongoing and severe harassment. So what happens next? Michael asked. I'll take Emily's formal statement today, the detective explained. Then we'll file an official police report. You've already documented the online harassment extensively, which is excellent. Based on this evidence, we'll open an investigation. That will include interviews with the alleged perpetrators and witnesses. He turned back to Emily. I have to be honest. This process can sometimes be slow and difficult. Are you prepared for that? Emily's voice was small but determined. If it makes them stop, yes. It will, Carlos assured her. At minimum, once formal charges are filed, the court can issue no-contact orders, requiring these students to stay away from you physically and cease all online communication about or directed at you. That would be a good start, Michael said. Detective Rivera nodded, then opened his briefcase and pulled out an official-looking form. All right, Emily, let's get your formal statement on record. For the next hour, Emily methodically recounted her experiences, with Detective Rivera guiding her through the necessary details. Dates, times, specific incidents, names of potential witnesses. Sarah marveled at her daughter's composure. The girl who had been hiding in her room just 24 hours earlier was now facing her nightmare head-on, her voice gaining strength with each page of the statement. When they finished, Carlos collected the printouts of the Instagram posts, carefully placing them in labeled evidence envelopes. "What about school tomorrow?" Sarah asked as the detective packed up his materials. "Should Emily return or wait until after we meet with the administration?" "That's ultimately a family decision," Detective Rivera said, "but I'd recommend waiting. Once Principal Winters reviews the evidence we've collected and understands the full context, she may take a different view of the situation. And frankly, a day or two away from that environment might be good for Emily right now." "I agree," Michael said. "Emily should stay home tomorrow. I'll contact Principal Winters tonight and request a meeting for Thursday morning." "I'll make myself available for that meeting if you'd like," Carlos offered. Sometimes having an official police presence helps school administrators recognize the seriousness of a situation. "That would be incredibly helpful," Sarah said gratefully. As Detective Rivera prepared to leave, he paused to address Emily directly. "I want you to know something. What you did today, coming forward, making a statement, that took real courage. Most kids in your situation never report it. They suffer in silence until something worse happens." His expression was solemn. "You've not only helped yourself, but you may have made it easier for the next student to speak up too." Emily managed a genuine smile for the first time that day. "Thank you." After the detective left, the family settled into an exhausted silence. The emotional toll of the day was evident on all their faces. Jason, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout the police interview, finally spoke up. "Is there anything I can do to help?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly with the unpredictability of adolescence. Emily looked surprised by the question. "I don't think so, but thanks for asking." "I could beat them up," Jason offered, half seriously. "I'm pretty sure I could take Caitlin." "Jason," Michael warned, though there was a hint of amusement in his tone. "What? She deserves it," Jason insisted. "No more talk about violence," Sarah said firmly. "We're handling this the right way." Later, after dinner had been ordered and eaten without much conversation, Sarah found Emily sitting alone on the back porch swing. The evening air was crisp with approaching winter, but her daughter seemed oblivious to the cold, staring out at the darkening yard. "Mind if I join you?" Sarah asked. Emily shifted to make room. Sarah sat beside her and they swung gently for a few moments in companionable silence. "I keep thinking about tomorrow," Emily finally said. "Everyone at school will be talking about what happened. They probably already are." "Probably," Sarah agreed, seeing no point in sugarcoating the truth. "But you won't be there to hear it. And by the time you go back, the school will have taken action against Caitlin and her friends." "You really believe that?" "I do. Principal Winters may have been focused on the knife incident today, but once she sees the evidence and understands what drove you to that point, she'll have to act. The school has legal obligations to protect students from harassment." Emily leaned her head against Sarah's shoulder, a gesture of trust she hadn't offered in months. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you what was happening sooner." "Oh, Em." Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter. "I'm sorry I didn't notice. I should have seen the signs that something was wrong." "You did, though," Emily said. "Last night at dinner, you noticed the cuts." She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the thin red lines on her wrist that had first alerted Sarah to the crisis. "I thought I was being so careful, but you saw right through me." Sarah gently traced the marks with her fingertip. "Why, Emily? When did this start?" "About a month ago," Emily admitted. "It was after a particularly bad day at school. Caitlin had managed to convince my lab partner to switch groups, and suddenly I was alone again, watching everyone else pair up. I came home and just felt nothing, like I was completely numb. The cutting made me feel something, even if it was pain." She looked up at her mother, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I know it sounds crazy." "It doesn't sound crazy at all," Sarah said, choosing her words carefully. "It sounds like you were desperate for relief from an unbearable situation. But harming yourself isn't the answer, Em. You're hurting the person I love most in the world." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I want to stop. I promise I do. We'll get you help, Sarah assured her. A good therapist who specializes in adolescent issues. Someone you can talk to about everything. The bullying, your feelings about Madison, the self-harm. Someone who isn't mom or dad. Okay, Emily agreed quietly. But promise me something, Sarah continued. Promise me you won't do it again. If you feel the urge, come find me or Dad. Day or night, no matter what. We'll drop everything. I promise, Emily whispered. They sat together as darkness fell completely, the porch light creating a small pool of warmth around their swing. Sarah found herself thinking about the knife again, that ordinary kitchen implement that had transformed overnight into a symbol of how desperate her daughter had become. Had she really failed Emily so completely that a knife had seemed like her only defense? Mom, Emily's voice broke into her thoughts. Do you think because of Madison, do you think I might be gay? The question caught Sarah off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. She considered her response carefully. I think you're 15 and figuring things out. I think sexuality exists on a spectrum, and many people your age are exploring where they fall on that spectrum. Most importantly, I think whatever the answer turns out to be, it changes nothing about how much Dad and I love you. Emily seemed to absorb this. What if other people don't feel that way? What if Grandma and Grandpa, or people at church, or… Let me worry about that, Sarah interrupted gently. Anyone who can't accept and love you exactly as you are will have to answer to me and your father. Emily managed a small smile. Dad did seem pretty fierce today. Your father would move mountains for you, Em. We both would. As if on cue, Michael opened the back door. Everything okay out here? It's getting cold. We're good, Sarah said. Just talking. Well, come inside soon before you freeze. I made hot chocolate. With the mini marshmallows? Emily asked, sounding momentarily like a much younger child. Michael smiled. Extra marshmallows for you. Always. After he went back inside, Emily turned to Sarah. I think I'd like to go to bed early tonight. I'm completely exhausted. Of course, Sarah said, standing and offering her hand to help Emily up from the swing. But have your hot chocolate first. Dad's hot chocolate is medicinal. It cures everything from broken hearts to scraped knees. I don't think it's going to cure all of this, Emily said, gesturing vaguely to encompass the entirety of the situation. No, Sarah agreed. That's going to take time and work and probably some difficult days ahead. But it's a start. Later that night, after both children were in bed, Sarah and Michael sat at the kitchen table, speaking in low voices to avoid being overheard. I've emailed Principal Winters requesting a formal meeting on Thursday morning, Michael reported. I was very explicit about the evidence we've gathered and the police involvement. I've also requested that the superintendent be present. Good, Sarah said. And I've made an appointment for Emily with Dr. Calloway on Friday. She specializes in adolescent trauma and self-harm. Michael nodded approvingly. How is she really doing? You two seem to have a good talk outside. Better than I expected, honestly. She opened up about the cutting, promised to come to us if she feels the urge again. And she asked me if I thought she might be gay. Michael's eyebrows rose. What did you tell her? That she's 15 and figuring things out. And that whatever the answer turns out to be, it doesn't change how much we love her. Perfect answer, Michael said, reaching across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. This would be hard enough without the additional layer of sexual identity questions. I know, but I think the two are intertwined for her. The bullying targets her perceived sexuality, which makes her question herself even more, which increases her vulnerability to the bullying. Sarah sighed heavily. I just wish she had come to us sooner. Kids don't always tell their parents everything, especially teenagers, Michael said. We both know that from our own adolescent years. I suppose, Sarah agreed. But something this serious. I keep thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't noticed the marks on her wrist last night. If she had actually brought that knife to school today, instead of just telling Caitlin she had it. But you did notice, Michael reminded her. And she didn't bring the knife. We caught this before it spiraled further out of control. Sarah's phone chimed with an incoming text message. She glanced at it, then handed it to Michael with a grim expression. It's from Principal Winters. Michael read the message aloud. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, I've reviewed the materials you forwarded regarding the alleged bullying of Emily. Given the serious nature of these claims and the police involvement, I'm assembling a team including our school counselor, district legal counsel, and the superintendent for a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Please confirm your availability. Emily should not return to school until after this meeting. Tomorrow? Sarah said, surprised. That's faster than expected. The mention of police involvement and legal counsel probably accelerated things, Michael noted. This is good. It means they're taking it seriously. Or they're circling the wagons to protect themselves from liability, Sarah countered. Either way, it gets us in the door sooner. Michael typed a quick response confirming their attendance. I'll text Carlos to see if he can make it on short notice. Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling the beginning of a stress headache. What do we tell Emily? She'll want to know what's happening. The truth, Michael said simply, that the school is convening a meeting tomorrow to address the bullying and determine the appropriate response, including consequences for Caitlin and her friends. And consequences for Emily too, Sarah added. We need to prepare her for that. Even with all the extenuating circumstances, she still made a threatening statement about having a knife. Michael nodded soberly. She'll likely face some form of disciplinary action, but with the evidence we have, it should be proportionate. Maybe in-school suspension rather than expulsion. And if it's not, if they try to make an example of her, then we fight, Michael said, his voice hardening. We appeal to the school board. We go to the media if necessary. Emily is the victim here, even if her response wasn't ideal. Sarah studied her husband's resolute expression, feeling a surge of gratitude for his unwavering support. Michael had always been the steady one in their relationship, methodical, strategic, calm in a crisis. She tended toward emotional responses, which had its own strengths, but sometimes clouded her judgment in high-stress situations. I'm glad we're in this together, she said softly. Michael's expression softened. Always. Now, let's try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be another long day. As they prepared for bed, Sarah found herself pausing outside Emily's door, listening for any signs of distress. The house was quiet. She gently turned the knob and peeked in, needing the reassurance of seeing her daughter safe. Emily was sound asleep, her expression peaceful in the soft glow of her rocket ship nightlight, a childhood comfort she had never outgrown. Sarah resisted the urge to cross the room and smooth her daughter's hair or adjust her blankets. Emily wasn't a child anymore, though moments like this made Sarah achingly aware of how much she missed that simpler time. She closed the door quietly and continued to the master bedroom, where Michael was already in bed reviewing emails on his tablet. She's asleep, Sarah reported, sliding under the covers beside him. Good. She needs the rest. Michael set his tablet aside. We all do. As Sarah switched off her bedside lamp, she found herself reflecting on the extraordinary developments of the past 36 hours. Yesterday at this time, she had been oblivious to the extent of Emily's suffering, going about her evening routine in blissful ignorance. Now she felt as though she had awakened in an alternate reality, one where her seemingly happy family had been harboring dark secrets and hidden pain. The knife, that simple kitchen tool she'd found wrapped in a paper towel, had been the key that unlocked this parallel world. Had she not discovered it, how much longer would Emily have suffered in silence? How much worse might things have become? Sarah shuddered at the possibilities and moved closer to Michael, drawing comfort from his solid presence beside her. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it as a family. The silence had been broken. The healing, difficult and messy as it might be, could finally begin. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the branches of the maple tree against their bedroom window. Winter was coming, but spring would follow eventually. Change was the only constant. The family that emerged from this crisis would not be the same one that had entered it. They would be stronger, perhaps, more honest, certainly, and hopefully, more attuned to each other's pain. As Sarah switched off her bedside lamp, she found herself reflecting on the extraordinary developments of the past 36 hours. Yesterday at this time, she had been oblivious to the extent of Emily's suffering, going about her evening routine in blissful ignorance. Now she felt as though she had awakened in an alternate reality, one where her seemingly happy family had been harboring dark secrets and hidden pain. The knife, that simple kitchen tool she'd found wrapped in a paper towel, had been the key that unlocked this parallel world. Had she not discovered it? How much longer would Emily have suffered in silence? How much worse might things have become? Sarah shuddered at the possibilities and moved closer to Michael, drawing comfort from his solid presence beside her. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it as a family. The silence had been broken. The healing, difficult and messy as it might be, could finally begin. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the branches of the maple tree against their bedroom window. Winter was coming, but spring would follow eventually. Change was the only constant. The family that emerged from this crisis would not be the same one that had entered it. They would be stronger, perhaps, more honest, certainly, and hopefully more attuned to each other's pain. Sarah's last thought before drifting into uneasy sleep was of Emily at the dinner table the previous evening, hiding her wrist beneath the table. Such a small gesture, but one that had set in motion a cascade of revelations. Sometimes the biggest changes began with the smallest observations. Sometimes salvation came from simply paying attention. Sarah woke before her alarm, anxiety pulling her from sleep. The digital clock read 5:17 a.m. Beside her, Michael slept soundly, his breathing deep and rhythmic. She envied his ability to compartmentalize, to set aside worry long enough to rest. She slipped quietly from bed and padded downstairs to the kitchen. The house was still, wrapped in early morning silence. Sarah started the coffee maker and mentally rehearsed the upcoming meeting with school officials. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. To her surprise, Emily appeared, already dressed despite the early hour. "You're up early," Sarah observed, reaching for a second mug. "Couldn't sleep, too nervous about the meeting." Sarah poured coffee for both of them. "That's understandable, but remember, you don't have to attend if you don't want to. Dad and I can handle it." "I want to go," Emily said firmly. "It's about me. I should be there." They sipped their coffee in companionable silence as dawn brightened the kitchen. Michael joined them shortly after 6, already dressed in one of his court suits, a deliberate choice that signaled his approach to the day. "I spoke with Carlos this morning," he reported. "He'll meet us at the school at 8:45 with copies of the police report and documentation of the harassment charges." "Will Caitlin and her parents be there?" Emily asked, her voice tight. "No," Michael assured her. "This meeting is specifically about your situation. There will be a separate hearing regarding Caitlin and her friends later." Jason stumbled into the kitchen around 6:30, bleary-eyed in his pajamas. He stopped short at the sight of his family already assembled and fully dressed. "What's happening?" he asked, confusion evident. "Why is everyone up?" "We have an important meeting at Emily's school," Sarah explained. "You'll be going to school as usual, but we'll drop you off early." Jason's eyes darted between his parents and sister. "Is this about yesterday, the bullying stuff?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "We're meeting with the principal to discuss how to address the situation." Jason sat at the table, uncharacteristically serious. "Are they going to expel those jerks?" "They should." "What? It's true, they're horrible," Jason insisted. "Derek Wilson, his sister's in Emily's grade. He told me some of the stuff they've been saying about Em. It's disgusting." Emily's head snapped up. "You knew about the bullying?" Jason looked uncomfortable. "Not all of it, just I've heard stuff. I thought it was just normal high school drama." "Why didn't you say anything?" Emily asked, more curious than accusatory. Jason shrugged. "I didn't know it was serious, and you always act like I'm just your annoying little brother, like you don't want me involved in your life." Emily was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Jason mumbled. Then, with surprising maturity, he added, "I'm sorry I didn't tell anyone what I heard. Maybe it would have helped." Michael checked his watch. "We should get ready. Jason, go get dressed. We'll drop you off at school on our way." Detective Rivera was waiting in the school parking lot when they arrived. "Good morning," he greeted them. "Are we ready for this?" "As ready as we can be," Michael replied. "Emily," Carlos said, "remember, you're not on trial here. You're a victim who responded to an intolerable situation. We're here to make sure the school recognizes that and acts accordingly." They entered the building together. Emily tensed as they passed the girls' bathroom, where the confrontation with Caitlin had occurred. Principal Winters' assistant immediately ushered them into a conference room, rather than the office. Already seated were Principal Winters, guidance counselor Ms. Patel, the district's legal counsel, and Superintendent Bradford. "Thank you for coming," Principal Winters began, her tone markedly different from the previous day, less authoritative, more conciliatory. "We appreciate your willingness to address this situation promptly." "Of course," Michael replied smoothly. "We're all here with the same objective, to ensure Emily's safety and educational well-being." The superintendent cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to state clearly that Lakeview School District has zero tolerance for bullying in any form. The allegations that have been brought to our attention are deeply concerning." Sarah noted the careful phrasing. Allegations rather than evidence, despite the mountain of documentation they had provided. "We appreciate that, Superintendent Bradford," Michael said. "However, I feel compelled to correct your terminology. We are not presenting allegations but documented evidence of sustained harassment over a period of months." He nodded to Detective Rivera, who placed a folder on the table. "This is the official police report," the detective explained, distributing copies. "It details the criminal charges being pursued against Caitlin Barnes, Alexis Chen, and Brooke Donovan for harassment, cyberbullying, and intimidation. The evidence includes over 50 documented instances of targeted harassment." The atmosphere shifted perceptibly. The district's lawyer leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral but his body language betraying concern. "Additionally," Michael continued, "we have documentation that Emily previously reported harassment to the guidance department without receiving adequate support." He turned to Ms. Patel. "Emily spoke with you approximately 3 weeks ago about being targeted, correct?" The counselor shifted uncomfortably. "Emily did come to see me. She expressed concerns about feeling isolated and mentioned some unkind behavior from peers, but she didn't provide specific names or details. I advised her on coping strategies and offered to meet with her regularly." "And did you follow up when she didn't return for additional sessions?" Michael pressed. "I sent her an email," Ms. Patel said defensively. "Student caseloads are extremely high. I can't personally track down every student who doesn't schedule a follow-up. Let's focus on moving forward constructively," Superintendent Bradford suggested. "The incident with the knife remains a serious violation of school policy, regardless of the circumstances." "Regarding the knife," Detective Rivera interjected, "I want to clarify an important point. While Emily did bring a knife to school in her backpack on a previous occasion, the incident that occurred yesterday involved only a verbal statement. No weapon was actually present at the time of the confrontation." Principal Winters frowned. "That contradicts what multiple witnesses reported. Several students stated that Emily threatened Caitlin with a knife." "Emily informed Caitlin that she had a knife," Michael corrected. "She did not produce a weapon or make a direct threat of harm. And as Detective Rivera noted, no knife was actually present. Emily had deliberately left her backpack at home that morning. Regardless," the district's lawyer spoke for the first time, "threatening another student with a weapon, whether physically present or not, constitutes a serious infraction under the district's zero-tolerance policy." "No one is disputing that Emily's response was inappropriate," Sarah said. "She made a poor choice in a moment of desperation after months of torment that was destroying her mental health." She looked directly at the superintendent. "What we're asking for is proportionality and context. Emily has no prior disciplinary issues. She's been an exemplary student until this incident, which occurred only after systematic harassment that went unaddressed by the school." Emily suddenly spoke up. "I know what I did was wrong," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I was scared and desperate and not thinking clearly. I've never done anything like this before, and I never would again. But I honestly didn't know what else to do. It felt like no one was listening, no one was helping, and it just kept getting worse every day." A brief silence followed her statement. The superintendent studied Emily for a long moment. "Thank you for your honesty, Emily. It takes character to acknowledge a mistake." He turned to his colleagues. "I believe we need to consider this situation in its entirety, not as isolated incidents." After nearly 2 hours of discussion, Superintendent Bradford cleared his throat. I believe we've heard enough to make some determinations. Emily will serve a 3-day in-school suspension, starting tomorrow. During this time, she'll work with the guidance counselor to develop strategies for handling conflict appropriately. She'll also write a reflection paper on alternative ways she could have addressed the situation. Additionally, the school will immediately implement a safety plan for Emily. This will include modifications to her schedule to minimize contact with the students involved in the bullying, regular check-ins with Ms. Patel, and a designated staff member she can approach at any time if she feels threatened. Principal Winters nodded. We'll also address the bullying situation directly. Caitlin Barnes, Alexis Chen, and Brooke Donovan will face appropriate disciplinary action according to our code of conduct. Given the evidence presented, this will likely include suspension and possibly more severe consequences. And the Instagram account? Sarah pressed. The cyber harassment? The account has already been reported to Instagram for terms of service violations, the superintendent assured her. Additionally, we'll be implementing mandatory digital citizenship training for all students, with specific focus on cyberbullying. There's one more thing, Emily said softly. Will I have to see Caitlin and her friends when I come back? I don't think I can handle that right away, Principal Winters replied. Caitlin, Alexis, and Brooke will be serving out-of-school suspensions while their cases are reviewed. By the time you return, they will not be present. Furthermore, when they do return, their schedules will be adjusted to minimize contact with you. Relief washed over Emily's face. Thank you. Outside in the parking lot, Detective Rivera said his goodbyes, promising to keep them updated on the legal proceedings. Once he had driven away, the three Morgans stood together in the weak October sunshine. You were amazing in there, Sarah told Emily, pulling her into a hug. Really? Emily asked, sounding genuinely surprised. Absolutely, Michael confirmed. Your statement about acknowledging your mistake but explaining your desperation was perfect. It showed maturity and self-awareness. As they drove home, Emily finally spoke. Do you think it will actually get better? Or will they just find more subtle ways to make my life miserable? Sarah turned to face her daughter. I think things will improve, but probably not instantly or completely. There will likely be awkward moments and difficult days ahead. But the difference is that now you're not facing them alone. The school administration is on notice, the police are involved, and most importantly, Dad and I know what's happening and are here to support you. Emily nodded slowly. I'm scared to go back, but I'm also tired of hiding and being afraid. That's understandable, Michael said. And it's okay to be both scared and brave at the same time. That's what courage is, doing something despite being afraid. Okay. Emily fiddled with a loose thread on her comforter. Do you think I'll have to talk about the cutting? Probably, yes, Sarah said honestly. But at your own pace, in your own time. The goal isn't to make you uncomfortable or to dwell on difficult topics. It's to help you develop healthy ways to cope with stress and painful emotions. Emily nodded, still focused on the loose thread. I haven't done it since you found out. About the knife, I mean. I've wanted to, but I've been trying to remember my promise to you. Sarah reached out to squeeze her daughter's hand. I'm proud of you. That takes real strength, especially when you're still in the middle of a stressful situation. It helps that I'm not keeping secrets anymore, Emily admitted. That was the worst part. Feeling like I was all alone with this huge, terrible thing that was consuming my life. You're not alone, Sarah assured her. Not anymore. And you never will be again, no matter what happens. As she left Emily's room a few minutes later, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 3 days. They had moved from crisis to cautious hope, from isolation to connection, from silence to communication. Challenges remained. Emily's return to school, the ongoing legal process, the therapy journey that was just beginning, but they would face them together, as a family. The knife that had started it all was now secured in an evidence locker at the police station. Its sharp edge had cut through the secrecy and silence that had allowed Emily's suffering to fester unseen. Now that those wounds were exposed to light and air, true healing could begin. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation in Principal Winters' office. The maple trees lining the Morgan Street had shed most of their leaves, creating a carpet of amber and crimson that crunched beneath Sarah's feet as she walked toward the house after retrieving the mail. Inside, the house was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the dishwasher and Emily's occasional keyboard taps as she worked at the kitchen table. It was Friday, no school due to a teacher-in-service day, and the unexpected reprieve had allowed for a lazy morning. Sarah sorted through the mail until she came to an official-looking envelope from Lakeview High School. She opened it quickly, scanning the contents before looking up at Emily. "It's the final disciplinary notice from the school," she announced. "They've completed their review of the bullying investigation." Emily looked up, tension immediately visible in her shoulders. "What does it say?" Sarah read aloud. "Following a thorough investigation and formal disciplinary hearing, Caitlin Barnes has been suspended for 20 school days and will return under a strict behavioral contract. Alexis Chen and Brooke Donovan have each received 10-day suspensions and will also return under behavioral contracts. All 3 students are required to complete the district's Respectful Digital Citizenship program and engage in community service projects related to anti-bullying initiatives." Emily absorbed this silently, her expression guarded. "So they're all coming back eventually?" "Yes," Sarah acknowledged, "but under strict monitoring and with clear consequences if they engage in any further harassment. And remember, the criminal charges are still proceeding separately through the juvenile justice system." They had established a new routine since the crisis. Emily had served her 3-day in-school suspension, during which she completed her reflection paper and met daily with Ms. Patel. Upon returning to regular classes, she was assigned a modified schedule that minimized potential contact with Caitlin and her friends. A safety plan had been implemented, including a designated safe adult Emily could approach at any time. Most significantly, Emily now attended weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Calloway, a psychologist specializing in adolescent trauma. The sessions were private, but Emily occasionally shared insights or techniques she had learned: breathing exercises for anxiety, journaling prompts for processing emotions, strategies for identifying negative thought patterns. Emily's social circle had shifted too. Several classmates had reached out, some offering genuine support, others merely curious about the drama. Emily had been selective in her responses, gravitating toward a small group of thoughtful students who shared her interest in art and literature. Zoe Hamilton, a quiet girl from her English class, had emerged as a particularly steady presence. "I'm meeting Zoe at the library at 4, Emily mentioned, closing her laptop. "We're working on our English project together." "That sounds good," Sarah said. "Do you need a ride or are you walking?" "Walking. It's not that far and it's nice out." Sarah nodded, pleased by this small assertion of independence. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, Emily had been reluctant to go anywhere alone. Her willingness to walk to the library represented progress. "Before you go," Sarah said, "I wanted to ask about Thanksgiving next week. Grandma called wondering if there's anything special you'd like her to prepare." Emily considered this. "Her pumpkin cheesecake? The one with the ginger snap crust?" "I'll let her know," Sarah promised, relieved by this show of enthusiasm. Food had been a struggle since the crisis, Emily's appetite diminishing during the worst of the bullying, then slowly returning as the situation stabilized. As Emily gathered her books to leave, Sarah noticed her pause before the hall mirror, studying her reflection with thoughtful attention. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked. Emily nodded. "Just thinking about haircuts. Dr. Calloway and I talked about how changing something physical can sometimes help when you're trying to make internal changes too, like an outward symbol of transformation." "Interesting concept," Sarah said. "Are you considering cutting your hair?" "Maybe. Nothing dramatic, just a change." Emily fingered the ends of her long brown hair. "I've worn it the same way since 6th grade. Well, if you decide you want a cut, let me know. We could go to that salon downtown you liked last time." Emily smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, a sight that had become more frequent, but still carried the power to lighten Sarah's heart. "Thanks, Mom. I'll think about it." After Emily left, Sarah found herself at loose ends in the suddenly quiet house. She considered catching up on laundry or starting dinner preparations, but a restlessness drove her instead to Emily's bedroom. She paused at the threshold, conscious of respecting her daughter's privacy, while also determined not to return to the well-intentioned ignorance that had allowed Emily's suffering to go unnoticed for so long. The room had transformed subtly. The walls, once covered with posters of bands and movies, now featured more personal artwork, some of Emily's own drawings and photographs. On the bulletin board above her desk, Emily had created what Dr. Calloway had suggested calling a wellness map, a collage of resources, affirmations, and strategies for maintaining mental health. Phone numbers for the crisis text line and suicide prevention hotline were prominently displayed, not because Emily was currently suicidal, but as a safeguard for difficult moments. The bathroom door stood ajar, revealing the neat counter. No razor was visible. By mutual agreement, Emily was using an electric shaver for now, a temporary measure while she developed healthier coping mechanisms. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Emily. Ran into Madison on the way to the library. She asked if we could talk. I'm going to hear what she has to say. Don't worry, we're in public and Zoe is here too. Sarah paused, unsure how to respond. Madison, Caitlin's cousin and the girl whose revelations had triggered the bullying, had been a peripheral figure in the aftermath of the crisis. Are you sure you're ready for this? She typed back. You don't have to do this today. The response came quickly. I think I am. Actually, I think I need to. Better to face it now than spend Thanksgiving break dreading it. Okay, Sarah replied. Call if you need me. Love you. Sarah spent the next hour alternating between half-hearted attempts at household chores and frequent glances at her phone. The rational part of her brain recognized that Emily was safe, in a public library with a friend. The protective parent part of her brain flooded her system with adrenaline at the thought of Emily facing another potentially painful confrontation. She had just settled on the couch with a cup of tea when her phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael. Just checking in. Quiet day? Mostly, she replied. Emily's at the library with Zoe working on a project, and she ran into Madison. Michael's response came after a brief delay. How do you feel about that? Sarah smiled at the carefully neutral phrasing, so typical of Michael's thoughtful approach. Nervous but trying to trust Emily's judgment. She feels ready for the conversation. She's stronger than we sometimes remember, Michael replied, and she has better tools now. This was true. In the weeks since the crisis, Emily had acquired an impressive array of emotional and psychological resources. Therapy techniques, supportive friends, honest communication with her parents, a safety plan at school. She was still healing, still vulnerable, but no longer adrift. Before Michael could respond, another text arrived from Emily. Talked with Madison. A lot of tears but good conversation. We'll tell you more when I get home. Staying at the library with Zoe to finish our project. Relief flooded through Sarah. She forwarded Emily's message to Michael, adding, Looks like it went okay. His response was immediate. See you all at dinner. Jason was the first to arrive home, bursting through the door with the limitless energy of a 13-year-old who had spent the day engaged in virtual adventures. Hey, Mom, he called, heading straight for the kitchen. What's for dinner? Lasagna, Sarah answered, following him. It's in the oven already. How was your day? Awesome. Derek and I reached level 23 in Warriors of Zeralth. He pulled open the refrigerator door, scanning for snacks. Is Dad home yet? He should be here soon. And Emily's at the library. Jason emerged with an apple and a yogurt. Can I eat this? I'm starving. Go ahead. Dinner won't be ready for another hour. Sarah watched as he devoured the apple in about 5 bites. Slow down before you choke. Can't help it. Video games make me hungry. He paused, suddenly serious. Is Em okay, like in general? The question caught Sarah off guard. I think she's doing better. Why do you ask? Jason shrugged, focusing intently on opening his yogurt container. Just checking. She seems different. Not bad different, just, I don't know. More serious? She's been through a lot, Sarah said carefully. It changes a person. Yeah, I guess. He stirred his yogurt thoughtfully. Some kids at school were talking about it. About Emily and the knife and stuff. I told them to shut up. Sarah tensed. What were they saying? Nothing bad about Em, Jason hastened to clarify. Just gossiping. I told them it wasn't cool to talk about other people's problems like that. That they didn't know the whole story. Pride swelled in Sarah's chest. For all his sometimes maddening teenage boy energy, Jason was developing into a young man with a strong moral compass. That was the right thing to do, she said simply. Thank you. Michael arrived home 30 minutes later, just as Sarah was setting the table. He greeted her with a kiss and a lingering hug that communicated understanding of the day's emotional toll. How are you really doing? He asked, loosening his tie. Sarah considered the question. I'm okay. Anxious about Emily's conversation with Madison, but trying to trust the process. How was your day? Long. Back-to-back meetings until 3. He brightened. But I got us tickets to that holiday concert Emily mentioned wanting to see, the one with the Minnesota Orchestra playing film scores. She'll love that, Sarah said, genuinely pleased. The front door opened and Emily's voice called out, I'm home. There was a lightness to her tone that Sarah hadn't heard in months. She appeared in the kitchen doorway with rosy cheeks from the cold and a brightness in her eyes. How was the library? Sarah asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Good. Zoe and I finished our project. We're doing a multimedia presentation on Sylvia Plath for AP English. And, Emily hesitated, running a hand through her hair. I decided about the haircut. I want to do it. Tomorrow, if possible. Sarah recognized this for what it was, a deliberate deflection. Emily would talk about Madison when she was ready, not before. I can call the salon in the morning, she offered. What style are you thinking of? Emily pulled out her phone and showed a photo, a chin-length bob with soft layers. Something like this. Dr. Calloway says changing your appearance can be empowering if it's something you choose, not something you're pressured into. I think that would look beautiful on you, Michael said. It wasn't until they were clearing the table after dinner that Emily finally broached the subject they had been carefully avoiding. So, about Madison, she began, setting a stack of plates by the sink. We had a good talk. Sarah and Michael exchanged glances but remained silent, allowing Emily to share at her own pace. She apologized, Emily continued. She said she never meant for Caitlin to use what she told her against me. Apparently, she just mentioned our experimentation in passing, trying to process her own feelings about it. She didn't realize Caitlin would turn it into a weapon. Do you believe her? Michael asked gently. Emily considered this. I think so. Madison was crying a lot. She said she's felt terrible watching what happened, but was too afraid of Caitlin to stand up to her. Emily paused. She also said she's been questioning her own sexuality, that what happened between us at camp wasn't just curiosity for her. Sarah kept her expression neutral despite her surprise. How do you feel about that? I'm not sure, Emily admitted. Part of me is still angry that she didn't warn me or help me when the bullying started. But another part understands how scary it can be to stand up to someone like Caitlin, especially when you're dealing with your own identity questions. Did you tell her how her actions affected you? Michael asked. Emily nodded. Yes, I told her everything, the isolation, the online harassment, the self-harm. I wasn't trying to make her feel guilty, but I needed her to understand the consequences. She listened and took responsibility, which meant a lot. So where does this leave things between you two? Sarah asked. We're not exactly friends again, Emily said slowly. But maybe we can be, eventually. We agreed to take things slowly. For now, we're just going to text occasionally. Maybe have lunch together after Thanksgiving break. That sounds sensible, Michael said, taking things at your own pace. That's what Dr. Calloway keeps saying about everything, Emily replied with a small smile. It's kind of annoying how often she's right. That night, after Emily and Jason had gone to bed, Sarah and Michael sat in the living room, sharing a quiet moment and a glass of wine. Do you think we're past the worst of it? Sarah asked, voicing the question that had been lingering in her mind for days. Michael considered this. I think the acute crisis is over, but recovery takes time. There will probably be setbacks along the way. I keep thinking about that dinner, Sarah said softly, seeing those marks on her wrist and realizing something was wrong, how close we came to missing it entirely. But we didn't miss it, Michael reminded her. You noticed, you acted, and because of that, Emily got help before things escalated further. He took Sarah's hand. We can't go back and prevent what happened, but we can be present for the healing. Sarah nodded, drawing comfort from his steady presence. The haircut tomorrow feels symbolic somehow, like she's reclaiming herself. It is symbolic, Michael agreed. It's Emily taking control of her narrative again. The next day, Sarah took Emily to Stellato Salon downtown. The atmosphere was cheerful and relaxed, with soft music playing and the gentle hum of conversation. Emily had brought the photo of the bob haircut, which she showed to Mia, her stylist. "I love this," Mia said enthusiastically. "It'll frame your face beautifully." Sarah watched as Emily settled into the chair, cape draped around her shoulders. There was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of uncertainty in her daughter's eyes as Mia gathered her long hair into a ponytail for the initial cut. But then resolution returned. Emily nodded, and with a few snips of the scissors, over a foot of hair fell to the floor. "No going back now," Emily said, her voice a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "That's kind of the point, isn't it?" Sarah said gently. Emily met her eyes in the mirror and smiled. "Yeah, it is." As Mia worked, shaping and layering what remained of Emily's hair, Sarah observed the gradual transformation, not just of her daughter's appearance, but of her demeanor. With each snip of the scissors, Emily seemed to sit straighter, her eyes brighter, her smile more genuine. When it was finished, Emily turned her head from side to side, examining her new look with critical attention. The bob framed her face perfectly, highlighting her cheekbones and bringing focus to her eyes. It was sophisticated without being severe, youthful without being childish. "What do you think?" Mia asked, clearly pleased with her work. "I love it," Emily said, her voice filled with a quiet confidence. "It feels right." Outside the salon, as they walked back to the car, Emily suddenly stopped and turned to Sarah. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Not just the haircut, for noticing, for believing me, for fighting for me." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Oh, Em, always, that's what parents do." "I know," Emily said, "but still, thank you." As they drove home, Emily pulled down the visor to check her reflection again, running her fingers through her newly shortened hair with evident pleasure. Sarah glanced over, struck by how much older, how much more self-possessed her daughter suddenly appeared. The haircut was more than just a style change. It was a declaration, a line drawn between past and future. The knife that Sarah had found in Emily's backpack 3 weeks ago now seemed like an artifact from another lifetime, a desperate measure from a girl who had felt cornered and alone. That girl was still there, still healing, still vulnerable in many ways. But alongside her was emerging a young woman with new strength, new boundaries, and new understanding of her own worth.